Ms. Schmidt?
Here.
Mr. Temperley?
Here.
Mr. Pickard?
Here.
Mr. Lair?
Here.
Ms. Wolf and Mr. Wright previously informed staff that they be absent from this evening's meeting.
Okay. Item 3, correction and approval of the minutes of August 8th, 2017. Or entertain a motion to approve or change them. You think they need to be changed?
Motion to approve?
Seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are approved. Item 4, questions and public comment. There's nobody here. Item 5, street maintenance project updates.
Just a couple of comments before we get started. First of all, Steve asked me to read the budget memo in its entirety very slowly. Just kidding.
25 pages?
46 or
46, even more than that?
Actually, a couple of quick comments. Tonight's budget night. We're going to go through the maintenance budget, the street budget, all the utility budgets. And I will tell you straight up that there's not a lot exciting in any of the budgets because South Main Street is really pushing everything. So when we get to that, certainly I've got a couple other comments I'll make, but the first portion that Dwayne will be presenting here in just a few minutes is really the biggest of any of the budgets. And in that regard, if for those of you that were on the board last year, you remember we went through kind of a lengthy step-by-step process over several months. And so what we're doing this year is really a very similar process, but we're doing it all tonight because we've kind of got the process down and figured out what information we'd like to try to get. We haven't gotten it all yet, but like we're trying to put together and really use more data to drive the decisions, the streets that we're looking at, and throw in a ton of different criteria, if you will, to identify which streets we want to work on. And of course, South Main Street has an effect on this next year also, because we want to stay north of, basically north of Lake Street, so that, you know, we don't cause a lot of congestion on the south side of town. But again, Dwayne will go through that in a little more. And then the last comment I want to make in that regard is just a real compliment to Dwayne. And Dwayne's probably sitting here thinking, oh, he's setting me up. No, I'm not. Dwayne really has taken this thing and put together some good information, some good logic to it. And he and Dave Ward really pay attention to this. And so I think what they're going to present this evening, you'll see the logic and the process and the reasoning for what we're suggesting we do in 2018. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Dwayne.
Well, thanks, Paul. Now I just have to follow through. As we present this, of course, if you have any questions, please interrupt. We can ask. A lot of information in the packet, as you probably have seen. I will try to go through each of the documents fairly quickly. If you have questions, ask, but much of it is going to be self-explanatory based on, as Paul said, the work sessions that we've done in the past. So the first chart, or actually the map that is on the screen that we're looking at, is the 2012 to 2017 maintenance. These are streets.
Vicky has a question. This is street maintenance project updates, correct?
Oh, I'm sorry, no. Well, there may be a little bit of this, but this is really, the presentation is geared toward what we propose for doing next year.
Okay.
So updates to the street maintenance projects.
All right.
So in other words,
So it's kind of all rolled into one?
so in other words, where are we at with this year's work? How are we looking to move into the 2018 budget on street maintenance? So what is our update in our approach that we've talked about in the past with the work studies?
Yeah, and then when we get to item 6 on the agenda, that's when we'll actually ask you to discuss and approve what we're presenting.
All right.
Okay.
So, the first map that we can talk about, and we can take these in any order, but the first map that's on the screen is the 2012 to 2017 maintenance. This map indicates in areas of blue or green, depending on which color blindness you have, those streets have been maintained either in a chip seal format or a mill and overlay, some type of maintenance activity has occurred on those streets in that time frame. Those streets are now not in the eligibility for this year's 2018 maintenance budget. So the next chart shows us 2018 streets that are in the possible maintenance budget. These streets are highlighted. They are ratings from a rating of 2 through 8. And if you recall from last year's work, we discussed that in the 5 through 8 ratings, we're looking at crack filling and chip sealing, some patching in those areas, and then following with the chip seal program. Areas that are in 2,
Can you put the two of them side by side?
sure can.
This is just an updated version of what we have, I think. At least from what I see.
I'm going to try.
Maybe. It's not like I can read all the words anyways, it just paints a prettier picture.
Sure.
Thanks.
And when we get to some of the charts, it'll explain some of the costs that are associated with that 2018 possible maintenance streets. I'm going to jump to another chart which talks about 60-year life cycles. If you recall in our work session, we talked about 60-year life cycles for the maintenance of the streets. In that maintenance, we look at either a 5 to a 7-year duration of doing chip seal maintenance on a 7-year to 5-year rotation. When the street continues to deteriorate significantly, even with the chip seal program, then we'll look to mill and overlay those streets on a rotation. And if you see in option 2, you see that in year 5 there's a chip seal, in year 10 there's a chip seal, in year 15 there's a chip seal, and then in year 20 we're probably looking at an overlay. So several chip seal programs, then to an overlay on a particular street. This option, and I can't quite read it from here, was updated with 2017 costs. And in our high-end estimates, we're looking at to serve all of the streets in the city, we're looking at $1.3 million per year, on the high end to a low end of $820,000 a year. That is assuming that we're replacing in chip seal program on a rotation of about 5 years. If you look at option 3, which is the last option that's shown, that price goes up, but what we're doing is we're increasing the rotation by 1 year to a 6-year rotation on the chip seal program, and then the mill and overlay as well. As you increase that year, the severity and the quickness at which the streets will deteriorate will cause that price to increase. So in option 3, the price is actually increased to entire $1.5 million per year and a low end of $0.9 million per year. So as you can see, as we extend from 5 to 7, we actually start losing the efficiency of our program. So if we go back to our maps, Paul, we had maps, as you'll see, we have actually looked at 2012 through 2017, which is actually a 6-year rotation already on the right-hand side map. So we are looking at streets that were chip sealed in 2010 in this 2018 budget. That street includes a portion of North Ferry Drive was chip sealed last in 2010. The one that is questionable that we are going to look at throughout the year is East Mills Drive. East Mills Drive was chip sealed in 2012. It is showing some cracking. We will probably at a very least probably do crack filling on East Mills Drive, even though it's not showing up in our proposed map. That would be the one questionable one that we would maybe think if we would try to shorten that 5 to 7 year program, East Mills Drive would be in that program of looking at a chip seal again here soon.
So we're not trying to chip seal everything, right? We don't chip seal all of our roads because we can't manage that much, right? Because if we're already doing it on a 7-year rotation and and it's our optimum range is like every 5 years, so we still need to scale back a little bit?
So
Is what it looks
we're
like?
trying to balance, as we're seeing, the best option is in that
Yeah.
5-year program. Again, the funds aren't necessarily going to be available to continue to be at that range, but the goal is to balance between that 5 and 7 year. Typically, the life cycle of a chip seal program is 5 to 7 years.
Okay.
And we are going to continue to evaluate how those streets look after 7 years. Of course, that will impact our decisions. The reason I brought up the East Mills Drive is it was 2012. It is showing signs in need of some crack filling to help maintain that street in the good shape that it is in now.
And I just want to mention Topeka. Do you know when that Topeka was done?
Topeka was 2000.
Nine is what I'm thinking, but I don't know for sure.
Well,
nine
you're
or 10.
jumping into the next map or the
But
next list.
that's chip sealed here, right?
This is,
2018 chip seal, right, on Topeka?
it will be, yes. And so your question is, when was Topeka reconstructed? And I believe it was 2010,
Right.
but I think we'll find
But
out.
just my looking at it is like 2010, 7 years, it's got cracks. I'm glad to see it getting some maintenance, because if it didn't get the maintenance, those cracks would continue. There would be more cracks, the pavement would start being irregular, and in 30 years, 35 years, whatever, it would need a full rebuild. So that's why we're doing this.
Correct.
Yeah.
Is looking for that maintenance dollars, and I'm going to jump to you've made me switch
I didn't mean
which
to.
map to look at. I think, or which list. Let's look at our 2018 projections. And just 1 second while I find that.
And these should all be in your packet, too, if you can't see this very well, because I sure
I think
can't.
I got it. Yeah. So the 2018 projections, this helps kind of explain the program and what we determined in previous budget sessions that we've done in the past. So the 2018 budget projection shows if your street rating is 10, 9, whatever rating it's in, the next column kind of shows how many square feet of street that the city has in each of those ratings as of 2016. In each rating, we have a column for crack fill, curb and gutter, patches, chip seal, 2-inch mill and overlay, or a full depth mill and reconstruct. As you can see in each of the ratings, it's either saying yes or no to that type of maintenance in that rating. And then it also lists how many streets in the city are currently in that rating scale. Now, I should say currently, as of 2016, and so anything that's been reconstructed in 16 and 17 has now been updated. That's why we had the first map I showed you. If you scroll down to the next listing, then that takes each of those ratings and each of those square footage and throws a low-end dollar amount and a high-end dollar amount to conduct that maintenance activity. So for example, in a rating of an 8, which is in a chip seal, small patch area, low-end cost is about $2.50 per square yard. High-end is in the $4 range. To give it perspective, as we reconstruct streets, if the street continues to deteriorate such that it gets to a 2 or a 1 and is in need of full reconstruction, the dollar amounts that we're estimating are in the $120 per square yard cost. That's 60 times the cost of doing a chip seal maintenance on an 8 road on a regular basis. So that tries to drive home what this plan really talks about. It's trying to do economic maintenance so that we can prolong the time it takes before a street gets to a 2 or a 1, and we are looking at that $120 per square yard cost. And as you can see, as the rating goes down, that price continues to rise, because as that rating goes down, there's more patching to be done, there's more curb and gutter replacement, spot replacement that's being done on those streets, and as you can see, the price that we're seeing is continuing to rise as that rating goes down. What we did do this year is we did adjust based on 2017 prices and the work that we've done so far this year. We have been able to adjust and lower some of the low-end numbers this year. And as you'll see, it actually has helped with our analysis to say that we are closer to an $800,000 per year annual maintenance budget. Now, we'll continue to analyze those prices from year to year to help to determine what that budget should be in future years. That, in combined with South Main Street, is why we are looking at proposing an $800,000 budget for maintenance in 2018. As you roll down that same spreadsheet, the next chart talks about 2018 streets that are available for possible maintenance. So that would be that first, or the second map I showed you. These are the dollar amounts associated with if we did everything on that second map. Your budget for maintenance would be, on the low end would be 4.8 million, on the high end would be just short of $6 million. So that's our starting point that Paul and I and Dave started with. Said 2018 possible maintenance, those are the streets we could work on that fit these criteria in that range of ratings. Now we have to get down to that $800,000. So tough decisions from this point.
So that set of streets there, that would be $4.8 million if we did them all.
Yes.
Well,
Low end.
yeah,
The low end, 4.8.
which is our entire budget for the year.
Mhm.
And that's just to kind of maintain parity. That's not, when you say could do, you could also say should do.
Well, as we said at the annual budget, if we don't do it this year, we will get to the remainder of the 4.8 million in consecutive years. And if we continue to maintain the higher end streets,
Yeah.
the goal is to keep pushing those ratings all higher so that price is cheaper to maintain. But you are correct. If we wanted to do all of them now, it would be this 4.8 to almost $6 million. And so that was our starting point, and that's the starting point tonight. The starting point is from this map to what is the proposed 2018 streets that we are looking to do. So if you scroll down one more to the last set, we've gone through a number of criteria, as Paul has said, and we've paired that original 2018 maintenance, possible maintenance, to a 2018 proposed budget maintenance of $800,000, and some of the criteria that we've looked at. As Paul mentioned earlier, we removed every street south of Lake Street to not interfere with anything on South Main Street. We also avoided all collector streets, anything that would potentially be a local access route for downtown during the construction of South Main Street, anything that would hamper the traffic flow for South Main Street reconstruction. So we've stayed away from Madison Street. We've stayed away from actually Oak Street as well. We've stayed away from Lake Street. And so all of those streets that were on the previous map have now been removed. We then continue to look at ratings. We also look at the year of the last maintenance. We're trying to look at water main age. One difficult crystal ball issue is the lead service replacement program. And the unfortunate part is with the funding of the lead service replacement, we don't necessarily have a crystal ball to know where local residents will choose to replace their services. And so we are moving forward with the maintenance program with that in mind. The next thing that we looked at in some detail is we have a number of CIP plans that are upcoming. no, I jumped to one last map. So in the coming years, in our major reconstruction CIP, obviously South Main Street is next year. Mulberry Street is in 2019. I believe it's Woodland Beach is in 2021. West Lake is in 22, and currently College is in 23. As those streets are reconstructed, in particular on Mulberry Street, there will be much more storm sewer than has ever been in that area before. So what we have looked at is where could we extend storm sewer from Mulberry Street, once Mulberry Street is reconstructed, to help with the drainage that is causing some of the deterioration on these streets, in particular west of Mulberry Street. So some of the reasons why some of the streets like Scott, Norton, west of Mulberry Street have actually dropped off the list this year is because we anticipate being able to extend storm sewer after Mulberry Street in 2019. Now, if you would prefer to change that approach, but those were some of the discussions that we've had internally about trying to decide how do we get from that $5 million or $5 to $6 million mark down to that $800,000. We also take into account dead-end streets versus collectors versus through streets. And in a sense, try to look at average daily traffic counts, which are somewhat tied to the same thing. And we have now gotten to a 2018 proposed maintenance budget that Paul is showing on the screen. There's one packet of information we didn't really talk about, but I'll just quickly talk about it. It's a stack of about 10 pages. It shows the 2016 ratings. It's this stack. It then also shows it's highlighted based on orange if it was maintained in 2016, yellow if it was maintained or to be maintained in 2017, and then obviously a red area in streets that are county jurisdiction but show up on our list. In other words, it's the county's responsibility to do the maintenance, so therefore they're in red so that we do not spend money on those.
So it's county's responsibility to do the maintenance, but it's the city's responsibility to do the pacer?
Yeah, not on their streets.
Oh,
When we print out our PACER spreadsheet, their streets come into our program.
oh, so they do the pacer, but it shows up on our report?
It does, yes. And so in order to eliminate them, I've just highlighted them in red. So as you look at this chart, anything that is, this basically lists every block in the city, where the rating was in 2016. You can assume that the rate, if we have not done any maintenance, in fact, if it's not yellow or orange, there's a chance that that rating has gone down since then. But if it has a yellow or orange, it probably has significantly increased in its rating. We will be needing to do our PACER ratings, correct, Paul?
This year?
Before December. So as the season is coming to an end this season, Paul, I, and Dave will go through this list and reevaluate and adjust the ratings for the PACER for the state. And next year, we will start with the 2018 ratings, unlike the 2016 that you see here.
I know,
This-
you got a lot of paper there. Glenn.
Yeah, there's a lot of paper here. So I think the discussion probably should start on any questions that you have, but also the 2018 proposed maintenance is the map that's shown there. The final page of the spreadsheet called 2018 budget projections shows that the low end we're at 716,000, and on the high end we're projecting 970,000 for the work that would be on these streets. You will see that in yellow, the streets rated 5 through 8 is significantly lower than in past years. We're in the range of $40,000 to $70,000 for chip seal next year. That means that we have done quite a bit of chip seal in the last several years. such that streets in the 5 to 8 program have now been chip sealed, and we actually are running low on those 5 to 8, and we are having to look at more of the 3s and 4s, and looking at mill and overlay or pulverize and repave. And as you can see in that red area, the 3s and 4s, we're looking at a significant portion of the budget, or the proposed budget of the 800,000 being in that type of maintenance activity. Any questions?
Has there been a lot of lead lateral movement yet, or not so much? It's a crystal ball, and I get that part, but I'm just curious if there's been a lot of movement.
It started off pretty slow and it's starting to pick up a lot of speed right now. I'd say physically, we're probably in the 12 to 15 range that have been changed. And we've gotten word from contractors, we're probably looking at least that many more in the next month or so. That's about as far as I'll project out, because
Yeah.
they give an estimate, then the people come back. So, and then there'll also come a point this year when we'll stop doing them because of frozen ground, et cetera. I can tell you really quick, for what it's worth, that we're averaging just a tad over $3,000 per replacement, which means we're averaging, I forget, 2,500 for reimbursements. And my latest calculation is at that rate, we'll replace about 125 services. I'm not sure that we're going to get that many. So it's a little early, but the momentum is picking up. And I suspect that it will be the bell curve. It'll get real busy, and then it'll drop off pretty quick, so.
So I saw a form on the city website.
I'm sorry.
I saw there's a form on the city website.
Yeah, the best thing to do, there's two things happening. One is we're still getting our line inspector out looking to see if they're actually copper or lead laterals in the house. If he finds lead, then we get folks the whole packet of information. Otherwise, it's kind of going right now by word of mouth, neighbors talking to neighbors talking to neighbors. We're hesitant in putting the entire packet up there because what's been happening is I've been getting calls from folks that have copper, and so it kind of a time consumer to send somebody out and all that sort of thing. So we're trying to stick to areas and actually doing the physical inspection of the pipes ourselves first before we get a lot of information to individuals.
I had Culligan's out already last year, so I've got lead pipes. So, but you still, I'm going to send somebody out to double check then? Or?
We have to
Yeah.
by the DNR rule. We have to
All
have
right,
our
okay.
own inspection. But yeah, I appreciate that. So we'll continue getting information out and getting the publicity out. We're still getting feedback from people, it's too expensive, not worth it, et cetera. And they'll have to make those decisions, but we'll keep getting
Right.
information out on that.
Okay.
But that is taken into account to a certain extent with what Dwayne was describing here, and that we're really hitting the areas hard where we know we're going to be doing some work. In other words, having our line inspector go out and check those areas. So if we've got to dig up the street, we can do it prior to, as much as possible, not 100%, but as much as possible prior to any work on the street.
But I know Dwayne and I talked for the meeting. I don't know if my street is even going to be done. So I was going to wait, but now I'm not going to wait. So,
Yeah, that's a bit of a roll of the dice too.
yeah. All right.
The only other thing I will add real quick is the $800,000 that we're putting in there, or looking to include in the budget this year, is probably more realistic from both a financial and a physical aspect. I think we talked about it at a previous meeting that, well, this year was a little unique in that we were not sure what was going to happen with East Lake Park Place, and with our current situation, with the number of employees that we have and the equipment, et cetera, there's only so much work we can do as part of this. We try to do the crack sealing and some of the saw cutting and that sort of thing, and really found that much over $800,000 worth of this stuff we just physically could not keep up, which means we've got to use contractors to do some of the things that typically our city crews would do. So our anticipation that the 800,000 is probably a more realistic number, again, both physically and financially.
And that's a lower number this year as it would be for a previous year, because Main Street's chewing up a lot of manpower.
which is, yeah, really the biggest factor, I would say.
And as we've stated, we'll continue to evaluate
Yeah.
how the ratings are deteriorating or improving, and we'll be able to, hopefully we'll be able to adjust that maintenance level from year to year by going through this process.
Of the 1 and 2 Pacer ratings, are there a lot of them out there? And is there any, because I'm assuming that just means it's a pretty bad road, right? So I'm also assuming that the number amount, like, because when you look at the square footages, there's not a lot of 1s and 2s, but there's at least enough of them out there. I'm just making sure that they're ticking your radar a little bit, and you're still keeping your ear to the ground to see if, whether, like, there's anybody else like us that's looking for comment, or if, like, the police department or fire department are chiming in, because they're at least out on the roads a little bit. I guess I'm just looking to make sure that we're soliciting as much info as we can, only because I look at those two and I see, and I agree with your approach, by all means I do. I'm just making sure that we're looking to as many more resources as possible for those really bad ones.
We do reach out to resources, not only from staff, from complaints that are coming in, based on where the crack filling or where the pothole replacements are at from staff. Those types of pieces of information all get comprised into this discussion. That's where it gets difficult to drop from that $5 to $6 million down to the 800,000, is because we know that we've taken complaints on some of the streets that we are having to drop off the list. We are aware of that. It's just that we can't replace or repair or maintain all of that $6 million.
Yeah, it's a big dollar amount to your point. I was just,
Yeah.
you're saying they're all the right words. You've been saying it all along. I was just, I wanted to make sure on that last little portion.
Yes, and some of the twos and threes are, in the capital improvement plan. But again, that capital improvement plan, even when we look out 5 years, South Main Street and Mulberry, we're not ticking off a lot of those streets on a regular, but we do have that one reconstruction project planned almost every year that does try to attack those ones, twos, and threes. At the same time, again, the reason for trying to keep those 5s and 8s where they are, the more that we can keep, the longer we can keep them from becoming a 3 or a 2, the better, especially if it's economical.
Do you get a lot of city complaints or comments back? Or is it kind of scattered, intermittent? How does that process work, I guess?
Yeah, well, there's a pretty good regularity, let me put it that way. There's two ways that it happens quite often. One is we get the pothole requests, and we keep a list of where we get the complaints and where we repair. And of course, there's a direct correlation between how bad the street is and how many pothole requests we get. But I would say that on a weekly basis, we'll get a call. And it's not unusual that we get calls from different people on the same street, which really makes it pretty clear that street needs some assistance. The other thing is, of course, Dave and Dwayne, especially Dave, is touring the streets on a regular basis. I mean, he could probably tell you right off the top of his head which streets he thinks should be done first. So we try from many different angles to keep a really close handle on this. And by the way, that's really one of the great purposes of the PACER rating, is to force us to go out and look at every single street every year. So yeah, there's about 3 different forks, or 3 different tines on this fork.
So we will be taking this list of 10 pages yet this fall, and at least driving, if not walking, portions of many of those streets to determine what the rating should be, and has it deteriorated faster than we thought. So we will get an update to that probably by the end of the year.
Okay.
You know, one thing I definitely don't want us to lose sight of is really just what you're saying, that I would say there's very few cities in Wisconsin that are keeping up at the pace they would need to keep all their streets in even a 6 to 8 range. It takes good dollars to do that. And when we do projects like South Main and Mulberry, you know, it's a nice big project, gives us a very nice street, but it does mean that there might be some smaller streets that aren't getting the attention. So once we kind of clear through the big projects, we will really have to start focusing on some of these smaller, if you will, maybe less traveled projects. So we're getting farther and farther behind, but I'm comfortable that, you know, we're keeping at least at a reasonable pace with the deterioration of the streets. I don't know that we'll ever win this battle, but I think we've got a good plan anyway.
It's a battle that at the state level is being fought too, based upon the transportation budget in the news so much lately.
Yes, agreed.
Actually, this is from a 5-year memory, but for walking the streets, that's supposed to be our job, the Public Works Board,
Okay.
because we're supposed to be telling them what the priorities are. I have to find the ordinance to establish the Public Works.
I know it doesn't say we need to walk the streets. I know that's not.
Well, last year I did walk on the sidewalks, and I did complain. Paul probably remembers that.
Absolutely.
And we'll keep doing that.
I don't consider that complaining, I consider that reporting.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's also part of the reason why we started the bus tour.
Yeah.
Was to make sure
Yeah.
everybody's looking at the same things and seeing the same things. But
Yeah.
we'll take those reports from anybody, and we take them seriously and we document them.
Right.
To your point then, if we should be going out and doing some, should we go out and pick some to do?
If you want.
I know if I
mean,
want.
I don't really,
don't you need exercise?
I don't really recall that that's part of the duties of the Public Works Board members.
I thought it was. I remember reading it a long time ago. So we'll follow up on that. But
I think there is some merit into it, but I also want to be pragmatic about it too.
right.
So that's why I asked the questions, and I keep hearing all the right answers out of Dwayne. But I also see what you're coming from too, like, we are the public comment.
And we
should
do have public comment at the beginning of this meeting.
Yeah.
And ask Vicky, I've showed up at some city council ones complaining. So, and if I wasn't on this board, I would probably be up here telling them to fix my street. So that's just, we provide the mechanism to do that publicly.
So I'm sure that the ordinance creating the Public Works Board doesn't say anything about walking the streets, but it does say something about.
Preparing a list of recommendations.
Right, who, you know, who tells who what, you know.
Yeah,
Right, I think there's certainly, you know, if we wanted to, we could do more saying, but, you know, the city personnel are the people that have so much of the information.
right.
Which we have access to whenever we
Right.
want.
No,
but-
yeah, no, I'm not opposing their recommendation.
Right.
But if someone in the public feels they're getting shortchanged, they got to be more vocal and present their case. So,
Yeah, but you also have an interesting point that we are the public too, so we need to do.
yeah, they are.
It's a good point to get me out.
Walk more.
Yeah,
And we are giving you a proposed
yes,
Yeah.
for
yes,
that very
Yeah.
reason.
Right.
yes.
If
And
there are reasons that a
we
certain
could change,
street,
tonight, we could change their proposal if we want to. So.
any other questions on that topic?
No?
Will,
So are the maps that you have up here the same as what we got?
No.
is there something different?
Yeah, they're different.
I don't think
I
we
think
have
there-
those maps.
I think there may be an issue with the maps we got on our iPads. 'Cause
Really?
I think there's
The
highlights
the
missing.
maps are there, but not all the highlights are there.
Yeah,
That's why I was having you put them both up.
yeah.
Say that again? I didn't hear that.
The highlights are missing.
Yeah.
There's not all the highlights are on our iPads. Like, you know,
the
the
maps are
road's
there.
showing, yeah, well, the highlights are the important part, though.
Yeah, that's,
Well, that's the way it's all,
So,
the way it's
that-
hard
so
work
like
is
if you-
the highlights.
If you put up, you got it. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, no, mine has got it. Right?
It pays to be the boss.
Dan's got it, too.
Yeah.
So, Dan,
That's hard.
you're kind of down there with us.
Yeah. Certain streets.
That's,
Well, what's
Yeah,
the
it's
title
not-
of the
it's not the whole
PDF that
thing
has
either.
those maps? I didn't even see them in the, Mark,
We'll
what's
have
the title
to,
of the PDF that has those?
we'll check that out. There's something issue, there's an issue, I think, more in the computer than,
So, possible
I
maintenance.
definitely could give you a hard copy of
There's a lot
each of these
I
maps.
didn't scroll down.
Yeah, there's a lot.
All right,
Lot
I
of
got
stuff.
it.
I will look
But it's-
at,
I mean, it's a horse piece.
There's stuff missing. There's stuff, yeah, you gotta be careful.
just when we were getting comfortable with the technology.
Now that you scroll,
Oh, it's mostly there, though.
you know, there's supposed to be.
I mean, all the other documents are good.
Yeah.
what,
When I was scrolling the map, I accidentally moved some of the highlight too, so it's part of it's.
You can?
Yeah, move it. Yeah, see? We see,
Okay.
we can change it and pull something different.
I like this guy. We're gonna put a road in.
Yeah, right. It's a dynamic document.
the good news is, the maps that I am looking at from the city's website do have the highlighting.
From Granicus.
From the city's website, the access does show the maps,
Okay.
I feel correctly. So there must be a,
So,
It might be the way they're being saved or something.
Yeah. Something
Okay.
lost in translation.
There you go. Thank you. Didn't know that. We'll check that out.
so it could be in the access from your iPads, is what I'm hearing. We'll definitely look into it.
Oops.
mine just shows mill and overlaying, the chip sealing color isn't showing up.
Yeah, they're a
So
little
you're-
sparse.
Yeah,
And the proposed, the possible maintenance one definitely doesn't have everything.
Is there a specific color that's missing on yours, Mark?
mine's the blue on chip sealing.
Yeah. That's what's missing on yours, Dan?
Dan's was missing the blue,
Okay.
Yeah.
but the website
But
has the blue.
On the possible maintenance,
Oh,
I've got the blue and not the red.
all right.
I thought we had it isolated there for a second. but- Okay. Very interesting. We'll check that out. That shouldn't happen.
So to sum it up, this is what we're proposing for 2018. So if board members want to add or subtract, you're welcome to make that motion. Otherwise, this is staff, this is what staff is proposing.
And then we would actually approve it in the context of the budget on the next item, right?
Correct.
Yeah, we don't get to do anything for item 5.
That's true.
1 out of 4. Streets are down.
Any other questions or comments on this agenda item? Then we can move on to the budgets.
Okay, well, again, you've looked at the biggest portion of the budget. I'll just make a couple of comments on the street department budget. You'll see they apply to the other ones too, but the budget, again, very bare bones because of what's going on South Main Street. It does include our vehicle replacement as scheduled. We put together, remember that, I think it was actually an 11-year vehicle replacement schedule, so that information is in the budget. And help me out here, Betsy, I believe it's 1.5% for wage increase is included in the budget at this time. And I guess those were the two things I was going to mention for this particular budget. So if there's specific questions, we can try to answer those too.
Does this particular part of the budget include the proposed special assessment project for American Way?
I don't
see
think
it.
so.
So it might be in a different section of the city budget.
Is that in the capital improvement? That's a good question.
Would that be for next year or further out? I assume that'd be further out
I read,
than next year, right?
I believe 2019 is where we moved it for capital improvement, right?
I don't think the city manager's officially requested that. I saw that in his memo. He said this
You don't
is
see it in
something he
there?
would like the council to consider.
Yeah, it's in the city budget.
It's in the city budget.
Well, there's 1.1 million for street rebuild in 2019.
Just doesn't say what street.
I think right below it, it says Mulberry for 2019. You see the, how
Right.
So American Way is not on the budget.
No, I don't see it on this portion.
But it might be in a different portion of the budget because he's got lots of different types of budgets.
And I think it
Oh,
also might
TID.
be TID. Portion of
Yeah.
American Way is
Oh,
TID as well.
What portion are we talking about? Does it start at Wallace Park, or does it start after Wallace Park going towards Harvey Road?
Both.
Okay.
Now, the piece that is in front of Wallace Park would be potentially part of the TID and potentially assessment as well.
I believe that's right. I'm trying to recall the conversations and how we had that set up.
Does the city own the portion of the land that's south of Wallace Park?
No,
We didn't buy that?
no. I believe the discussion was, oh, I got to be careful here. I don't know. I thought there was a discussion about a land swap of some sort, or swapping the assessment for the property, if you will. I apologize, I wasn't ready for this one. I don't have a good answer
Wow.
for
yeah,
the American
this
Way.
sounds like it's not ready yet. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't like new streets going in.
He's got it in his budget address.
Yeah, I saw that, but it needs to be part of these spreadsheets somewhere.
Well, and in general, how much TIF work has actually gone through the Public Works Board? You know, when a TIF is proposed, it's not proposed at the Public Works Board, it's proposed,
Economic Development Commission. Do you want it to be through the Public Works Board? I've had that concern too.
Well, if the streets are being built, that's Public Works Board jurisdiction also.
I've never seen that here. We'll bring this up in another agenda item. Another
Yeah,
meeting.
and we'll get an answer from Steve and get an email to
Yeah.
you for sure.
Yeah, and I don't have the full budget with me, but there is a section just for special assessments.
Yeah.
There
Okay.
is a section just for the TIDs, so if I can bring that up, I will, and let you know if I see that and where it is in the full budget.
All right.
Betsy, I recall that is probably the case. My recollection of that conversation were those two other items, the TID and the assessment.
Yeah, they're in that separate part of the budget.
Right.
So we'll get you that information for sure. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Got any easier questions?
This is fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Come on. Usually it's real easy. This is good.
Okay. I like your attitude.
Actually, I do. Recycling management, is that strictly for the yard waste, or does that include the recycling fees?
What we're looking at is doing something different with our yard waste center, and I believe most of that money is for a study to figure out what it is we can do in lieu of what we have right now. We have had some initial conversations with Mead and Hunt to come up with some ideas for something different. The yard waste area just isn't working anymore, and we need to do something different.
Because actually, somebody did contact me. They've noticed it's overfilled, and seeing township people adding to it doesn't help.
Yes. It's overfilled, we're getting improper materials, it's in a terrible location. So we need to address that issue, and that's what that money is for.
If it's only 4,000 a year to maintain that, or?
No,
Oh,
no, that's pretty inaccurate, I believe. It's
it says
kind of-
4.2. These are in the thousands, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That number is not accurate. We spend more time than that reflects doing it, moving the stuff, getting it out to the conservation club, all that sort of thing. But that's what we're going to budget for maintaining the existing one.
So it really costs more than this, because it's hard for you to keep track of how much time?
Yes. There's two parts to it. One is we have to move the material from there out to the Conservation Club. That's probably what the 4.2 really represents. There's the other work of just pushing it up off the street every once in a while, disposing of improper materials. Shingles have become very popular, and I think we spent a couple grand this last year getting rid of shingles, so that ended up in another portion of the budget. You know, sometimes we charge the labor for hauling that to a different budget, just because we're maybe hauling other materials the same day, and the guys don't separate it necessarily on their timesheet. But yeah, so the number's not accurate, but we haven't put together the more accurate number yet.
Can you give a guesstimate, or
I'd say at least twice that.
8,000?
Yeah, 8 to 10, I'd say.
8 to 10 a year.
Yep.
If we were to have to build a new one or relocate it, what do you think that would be?
I'm gonna
Another guesstimate.
I'm gonna hedge that one a little bit. We're looking at a lot of different options. We're looking at one option where perhaps we'd have a manned area, or a staffed area, I shouldn't say manned, a staffed area where it would only be open on certain times, certain days, certain times, but there would be an individual there to make sure only the right stuff went in. We could have a similar setup to what we have now, just at a different location with a little more control, maybe a fence or something like that. So there's also a full-blown recycling center, or composting center, I should say, is actually what I'm talking about, where we very carefully separate out the waste so that we had a compost pile, and perhaps we can actually generate some revenue from that as opposed to a materials pile. So all those options are really being looked at right now, and I'd be misleading you if I gave you any kind of number on that.
All right. 'Cause I know Watertown, they had to put their electronic recycling inside gates because people from outside their city were coming in.
Yes. And that's become a huge issue, too. I know
Yes,
the
this
county's
person-
cut way back.
Yeah, this person, I agree with this person. We're subsidizing the township people.
Yeah, and that will be a specific discussion in all this, whether or not we're going to do any kind of electronic recycling.
Maybe someone should look into a possible permitting system, if people have to have a permit on their vehicle. And that would cut down on the people coming from out of town.
That's on the table. The size of the vehicle that could be used to bring waste in is on the table. I think there are still some communities that require it to be bagged, and it has to be in clear bags and all that stuff. So, yeah, again, we've really just kind of started the discussion, and those types of things are all part of that discussion.
Okay.
Who's involved with that discussion?
Well, Mead and Hunt is our consultant on it, and so far it's been purely internal. I suspect and hope that it comes to you folks.
Well, yeah, feel free to kickstart something. You don't have to decide anything. That way you can get a feeling of what the public's going to react.
Yeah, and really, we're in the information gathering stage now. We're keeping a little closer eye on what shows up at ours and when, and from whom. Although I think we have a sense for what that answer is. Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry, Betsy.
I did find in his budget, under the special assessments, he has for 2018, street project American Way, $200,000.
Is this in the street department budget? Or is
No,
this
it's in the special assessment.
special
fund,
assessment?
which is a separate part of the budget.
All right.
So that would run from the west end of Wallace Park all the way out to Harvey Road, is my understanding?
No, not quite
Well,
that
I think the part he's talking about is just from, industrial to Brookstone? The part that's missing by Wallace Park there?
Or is the 200,000 for the engineering work?
That could be what that
But
is.
it's under the special assessment fund.
Right, but that's where it would be even if it was
That
engineering
might
work.
be the city's portion of it.
Yeah.
It would either be just the streets from industrial past Wells Park or engineering from.
We're not sure.
We'll get some
Well,
clarification.
In his note, it sounds like it's just connecting the two parts. So So would we just, it feels like it should just be the road.
But his memo said Harvey Road, too.
Why?
Oh, on the far east end. Yes, I believe that's part of it, too. I know the portion by Wallace Park is pretty well graded, right?
It's ready for.
Yeah, it's ready for it.
Yeah, it's been that way for a
200
long
grand is about
time.
the right dollar amount, right?
Yeah, but it also could be.
Yeah, it could be a lot of different things. Why? He's not here, so we can do that.
Yeah,
That would be interesting, wouldn't it?
It doesn't work, but it's worth a shot.
well, all this confusion is confirming what I've felt all along. Some of these TID street projects kind of go through too fast without oversight from Public Works Board, so I'll,
Well, I don't know, has that gone through any other board or council?
No,
Not that I'm
it's just in the proposed budget, so
Yeah.
the
For
city
next
council's
year.
only seen it once.
yeah, so,
Yeah, to me, those should get a little more, what's the word?
Scrutiny?
Scrutiny,
Scrutiny.
and instead of just being put into the budget.
yeah,
That's my opinion.
yeah, so.
Mhm.
When we get
Pass it
to,
along.
we get to the end of the meeting, we'll officially request that agenda item for the next meeting. So we'll just focus on the budgets we have for tonight.
So for the streets for 2018 street lighting, what's that number for?
Is that the 500,000? That's Main Street, South Main Street. That's
Oh, okay.
decorative lighting on South Main Street.
And do we get reimbursed from the state for some of that?
Oh, boy. A portion of that,
I would hope so. It's a big number.
I don't believe it would be that portion.
Well,
So
we-
I think that amount is all that we're going to have to pay out of the entire street lighting.
well, okay, so let me back into it. The state would pay for standard lighting. And they set that amount. The decorative lighting is over and above that. I believe you're right, then the 500,000 is our cost after we get a credit, if you will, from the state.
Okay.
I believe the total, now that I think about it, was about 625,000.
And who decided on the decorative lighting?
That was done at the city council level.
No, we did too, Public Works Board. Doug was on, Doug went and,
Yeah.
Doug traveled and he showed us pictures.
That's right,
Yeah.
yes. But I believe it was ultimately approved.
Yeah,
By the
but
council,
we,
yeah.
we reviewed that. Doug
Yeah.
and Diane went out and brought back pictures and,
Right.
yeah.
I
What's your
didn't,
pushback?
I didn't know that decorative street lighting was so expensive.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
It is. It's not only decorative, but there's more of them. There's
Mhm.
more fixtures are needed to accomplish what has to be the lighting standard on the street.
Yeah. Rudy was pushing for it because the trees are gonna go away, so he wanted to give the people there something more
Correct.
decorative until the trees grow back.
Okay, just makes the yard waste place look cheap. It looks like it's inexpensive now.
Yeah, well, we could put decorative lighting around it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, decorative lighting there. Okay.
Other than South Main, I don't see anything else huge jumping out at me. So if there aren't any more questions or concerns, anybody? I'll entertain a motion to approve the proposed 2018 budget for streets.
And I think what you guys are doing is making a recommendation.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's, what this proposal would be is what we've been talking about as the
Oh, yeah,
900,000 for that portion, right?
yeah.
So kind of taking a step back and,
If you want to add a street or take one
I mean, I
away?
can on mine.
Yeah.
How do you want to word that? Motion to approve as discussed.
Yeah. It'd be the spreadsheets we have in our packet.
As presented.
Yeah.
So motion to approve the streets budget as presented.
That's correct.
Okay.
Actually, shouldn't it be a motion to recommend to the city
Yeah,
council?
yeah. Always make a motion to recommend to the council.
We don't approve anything ever.
Yeah, we make recommendations.
It's like 95% of the time, we only make recommendations to the city council.
Yeah.
So to be, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Can you articulate that?
How about recommend city manager's 2018 streets budget as prepared?
yep. Yep.
Sounds good.
That
So
sounds
said.
good.
Do you have a second already?
There's a
Do we have
second.
a motion?
If somebody
Is
wants
that-
to make that motion, that's,
So motion.
Second.
All right, roll call vote.
Mr. Temperley,
Aye.
Mr. Picard,
Aye.
Mr. Lear,
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt.
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Item 7, discussion recommendation 2018 budget for wastewater.
Would you, would you mind if we did 7, 8, and 9 kind of together?
Well, I was 6 afraid of 7. It's 7, 8, 9. It's getting late, I'm tired.
You
This
wanna
doesn't
do
happen
7,
often.
8, 9? Well, yeah, okay.
Oh, because all of the attachment applies to all three, is that what
Yeah.
you're saying?
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. And really, the comments that I've got apply to all of them. That, there's a couple of specific ones that I'll address, but again,
Maybe make the presentation as a whole, and we'll take individual
Okay.
Yeah.
motions for each item.
okay, yeah, thank you, that's better, I appreciate that. In the electric budget, really the bulk of the heavy-duty projects will be done this year, and I'm talking about South Main. We've got maybe one next year, and that is a new line at Vita Plus that we'll be doing, but otherwise, the electric is settling down, hopefully. I know Betsy's looking at me saying, hopefully is right, because we've been spending a lot of money there. Wastewater, really probably, go ahead, yes.
On electric, are you, on the personnel,
Thank you.
I saw that too.
Thank you. I was going to mention that. The way we're set up right now in the electric department is we're at full force, if you will, with 5 line workers. And it's been a while since we've had 5. I should say we've got 3 journeyman line workers and 2 apprentices. And it's been some time since we've had that full force. And a quick aside, we've got 2 of those gentlemen in Florida right now. In the water department, if I can jump to that one, we now have 3 people in the water department. It's been 2 for many, many years, and this past year we jumped that to 3. And a lot of that is to help with the AMI and the lead service line replacement work. And this year, now we're also at full strength in the wastewater, in that we've got 4 employees there, 4 operators, a foreman and 3 operators in the wastewater department. Is that getting to your question, Mark?
Well, are you eliminating 1 lineman? That's what it looks like to.
Well, at one time, we were at 6, but that was anticipating some retirements. And so 5 is really kind of our leveled out spot.
So you are eliminating a position.
Actually, you're right, from the previous budget, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we were at one time at 6 last year for a month or so, I think, or whatever, and then a gentleman decided to go where there's more money apparently, so we're at 5 now.
So you can handle 5.
5 is what we'd like to stay at, yeah. Now, we do anticipate a couple of retirements in the next year or 2. Won't change the number of employees.
Right, yeah.
But it may change the rate of the employees.
Okay.
Is that a little more clear? I'm sorry
Right.
about that.
Now, the increase in water utility personnel.
Again, that's driven a lot by wanting to get our AMI program done in-house, where we're going to be changing out meters with our own personnel. And then the lead service line replacement work will be taking some staff time too. So we are now at 3 operators there.
But eventually that work will go away in a few years.
Yeah, it will.
Then you anticipate someone else retiring or moving on for more salary, and
Quite honestly, I think 3 is a more reasonable number for that department overall. We've been running really kind of loose for many years, or not loose, but short for many years. You know, retirements, we're anticipating both the meter and the lead service line being a good solid 3 years, and then we can reevaluate after that time. But I'll be real honest with you, I think 3 is a more workable number in that department.
So the lead service replacement's done by contractor, not by,
We have to do our portion too, though.
which is, yeah, so the city does the digging up of that?
That's about all we don't do, although we're considering doing our own digging. So right now, we have a contractor do the digging, but we do the replacement.
Okay.
Yep.
We do
And
the
all the paper-
replacement on the city portion, right?
Right,
Correct,
right.
Okay.
right. And all the associated DNR paperwork and all that kind of good stuff. And, I don't mean to be flip, but the DNR requirements are getting a little more intense.
Yeah.
And keeping up with that is important. Yeah, good point. Actually, I think the DNR recommended 3.5, but we couldn't find a half a person, so we went with 3. So we're like I say, we were running a little short in that department overall. A couple other comments, back to the water budget then. Like I said, the drivers are the AMI and the lead service. We are considering applying for a simplified rate case for 2018 in the water department. And what that means is, by PSC rule, if the rate increase you're proposing is under 3%, you can go through a simplified rate case, not the full-blown rate case. And we just think it's prudent to continue to look at that and make sure our rates are affordable, but our revenue is such that it's covering our costs. So we're going to take a look at, we're going to go through the process and see if it's worth doing. And I guess the only comment I've got in wastewater, we are starting to feel the effects of a 20-plus-year-old facility. And so our maintenance, but that all goes into the DNR fund, but our maintenance, we're seeing that overall activity going up. And
Do you know what kind of maintenance you're seeing go out there?
a lot of the pumps now, Mark, are
Okay.
starting to wear out. It's one of these cases where, we find a bad bearing on something and go in to fix that, and we find 2 more bad bearings, and it's kind of a domino thing, but it's mostly movable parts. Motors, shafts, bearings, et cetera. But still, our DNR fund is keeping up with that. The permitting process is doing us very well in that we are getting a better handle on what's coming into the plant, and our surcharges are helping to cover that. So we're quite comfortable with how that's going. So that's really a brief overview of those 3, and I'll certainly, if there are other questions you've got, I'd be happy to answer those.
Other questions, comments?
And I'm sorry, I think of one more thing. Our purchased power cost. Misty handed out a thing about Moody's and WPPI. We actually have the WPPI meeting this week. We have typically been told to anticipate between 3 and 5% increases in the cost of our purchase power from WPPI. They scaled that back considerably to 1 or 2. I don't anticipate they would ever have a 0% increase, but we're seeing WPPI is doing a great job of maintaining some good wholesale costs, and that certainly helps us.
No other questions, comments? So, at this time, let's just make motions for each portion. So, number 7, I'll entertain a motion if anyone wants to modify the proposed budget or approve as proposed on the 2018 budget for wastewater.
Recommend City Council to approve the 2018 wastewater budget.
Is there a second?
I can second that.
All right, the motion is to approve the budget as proposed. Could I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Pickard?
Aye.
Mr. Laird?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Temperley?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
8, the 2018 budget for water. Does anybody want to make any changes to the proposed budget? If not, I entertain a motion to approve as is.
Recommend City Council approval of the 2018 wastewater budget.
Second?
Roll call, roll it again.
Mr. Laird?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Temperley?
Aye.
Mr. Pickard?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Item 8, the water budget. If anybody doesn't have any,
Hold on. You just did water, so maybe you go down to 9 electric. You did wastewater and water.
Okay. Recommend City Council approval of the 2018 electric budget.
Second?
roll call, vote again.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Temperley?
Aye.
Mr. Pickard?
Aye.
Mr. Laird?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
So we went through all of them?
Yes.
That's what I thought. Okay. Item 10, recommendations for future agendas. We touched upon this before. There's been some new streets brought in under TID projects that I'm pretty sure were not brought before the Public Works Board. And I think there should be more oversight.
Yep.
So,
And then there's talk about American Way and some more details on that for next year.
Which is a TID project.
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
So just in general on the TID project, I can see somebody saying, well, once it's decided, then the Public Works Board is the one to decide, kind of look over the plans or whatever. I can understand that that's a valid argument. But I would just say, in general, what I see right here, right now, on this American Way is it's in the budget. It's not even gone to the city council, is what I hear. Is that correct, Vicki?
Well, we had our first look at the budget last meeting.
But it's not a separate topic. That's
No.
not a separate agenda item at the city
No,
council.
that wouldn't happen until next year sometime.
Yeah, and so, even if it's not through the Public Works Board, where I can understand that, argument can be made not to do it there, that it should be done somewhere.
Because what's that street by Culver's?
Elm Street.
Elm Street, yeah.
Yeah.
That's nice to have, but was it really necessary?
I think the same thing.
Yeah, so,
So
this is something for the city manager, a policy for the city manager, that anything related to streets or public utilities as part of the TID should at least come before us, not be totally separate. So,
how would you like that as an agenda item then?
well,
Discussion?
discussion.
On streets and TIDs or
Any utility work done under TIDs,
Or streets.
or street, yeah, street, yeah, when I say utility, streets are utility too, so.
And maybe just some information on the proposed special assessment that's in the budget for American Way, just so we know what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
so that's two separate items?
I
you're saying,
think so.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, one's general, one's very specific. then.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Any other recommendations for future agendas?
2017 construction project update, or lack thereof.
You thinking like Lake Park Place?
I thought he put that in the city website,
What's that?
2017 street update.
We have a construction report
Yeah,
on there. Yeah,
Yeah.
I wouldn't, I don't know if it's so much an update as a be aware of what we're doing next kind of a thing.
yeah. It's on the Leader Facebook page. I know they shared that, whatever you put out there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I don't do Facebook.
Oh.
Okay.
All right, is that it? Then I will adjourn the meeting.
All right.